Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 109. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
All right, so tonight we're going to be doing our next bite-sized murders cases, plural. But since But since Jameson's not with us, I'll be doing two. I'll be doing his case. So sorry, Jameson, but the world moves on.
Is it going to be an unsolved one as per usual?
No, because as we, we'll spoiler alert for the audience. We're going to do 3 cases that involved celebrities being murdered.
Oh, spicy.
Yes. And the first one is actually coming in by request from our friend Amaya.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Maya.
Yeah, no, she listens. I didn't know she listened. I thought this was too graphic for her, to be honest.
Wow. Well, thanks for listening, Amaya. Good to hear from you.
So we're going to do that one first. And we'll just dive right in, I guess.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So Judith Barsi was born in Los Angeles County, California on June 6, 1978. She was the daughter of Joseph and Maria Barsi, both of whom were immigrants to the U.S. who fled the Hungarian People's Republic following the 1956 uprising. I don't know much.
I didn't know about that.
I was going to say, I don't know much about it either, but I mean, I'm going to assume that must have been a really bad time to be a civilian on one side of that conflict.
If you're fleeing your country, I think it's a given that it's a pretty bad time.
Yeah, that's exactly. So the two of them immigrated at different times, and they met at a restaurant in California where Maria worked as a waitress. And both had been previously married prior to them meeting. So her mother, Maria, started training Judith for a life before the cameras at a very young age. She wanted her to be famous. So Judith had a role in a movie called Fatal Vision, playing Kimberly McDonald when she was only 3 years old.
Wow.
It's crazy to me. And Judith was eventually discovered at the age of 5 at an outing at an ice rink. She was soon earning 6 figures.
Dang, and we're talking the 50s.
No, at this point we're talking the 80s. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
Because Judith was born in 1978, so at this point it's the early 80s.
Still sounds like a lot for a child actor.
I mean, for a child, she's 5 years old, and within a handful of years, she'd be making 6 figures. I agree. That's a lot of money.
That's crazy, yeah.
Okay, so this commercial film crew reportedly were mesmerized by her as a cute child, and they knew they wanted to use her in their commercials.
Dang, must have been a really cute child. It's kind of an odd...
I mean, it was a different time back then, too, though, you know?
Okay, what do you mean by that?
I mean, like, you didn't have everybody all over the social media and the internet vying and sending you their headshots. Like here, it was harder to recruit and find, So
right, that makes sense.
And this is actually how some serial killers in California operated, because they would pretend to be professional photographers for magazines.
Awful.
Yeah, we're gonna cover some of those in the future. Yeah, they're awful.
That's just, predatory and terrifying.
Yes. Judith's first commercial was for Donald Duck orange juice. And after a single meeting, she was signed to a contract with Harry Gold and Associates Talents Agency.
There we go. Off to a good start.
Which is crazy. That's how cute this girl was. She went on to appear in more than 70 commercials and guest roles on TV, including episodes of The Twilight Zone, Growing Pains, the miniseries Fatal Vision, in which she played a daughter of someone who was killed by her father.
Whoa.
Which is crazy because it is, spoiler alert, this is a lot of foreshadowing.
Wait, daughter of someone who was killed by her father?
Yeah, she played someone. She played a daughter who was killed by her father.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Don't like that foreshadowing.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's how this ends. Spoiler alert. So,
For real.
as well as her career on television, she went on to appear in several films, including the film Jaws: The Revenge. Now,
Oh, wow.
that's the worst of the Jaws movies because of how outlandish the plot was. That somehow the Brody family went from Martha's Vineyard somewhere in the Caribbean, and the shark followed them there for revenge.
Is this it? Are we jumping the shark? Wink, wink.
Yeah, basically. Terrible movie, but she was in it. And Judith also provided the voice of Ducky in the Land Before Time series and Anne-Marie in the movies All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen those.
Yeah, I've definitely seen Land Before Time, and that's like the main character.
Ducky, is it? I have no idea.
I think so.
It's been a long time
Been
since I've
ages.
seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the time she began 4th grade, Judith was earning an estimated $100,000 a year, which is basically the equivalent to about $250,000 today.
Dang, and I'm sure. I think I see where this is going.
So this allowed her family to buy a 3-bedroom home in the West Hills of Los Angeles. As she was short for her age, she was 3'8" or 112 centimeters at 10 years old. She began receiving hormone injections at UCLA to encourage her growth. But it was this petiteness that...
Take a note on that. Hormone therapy is for cisgender kids too, not just for trans kids.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. Interesting.
Yep. And they're trying to ban it, so watch out.
Well, I'm sure certain states will ban it, but it's not...
Already have.
Yeah, it's not for this podcast, sadly. We could probably spend all night talking about it, yeah. So her petiteness led casting directors to cast her in roles as children who were much younger than she was, obviously because of her size.
It's very valuable as an actor to have that, especially because you can take direction better.
Yes, absolutely.
Someone who might actually be that age.
Her agent, Ruth Hansen, was quoted in the Los Angeles Times saying that when she was 10, she was still playing children who were 8 or 9 years old. But as her career went from strength to strength, her home life rapidly deteriorated.
Oh, no.
As Judith's career success increased, her father Joseph was distressed by his own inability to find work and soon became an alcoholic.
And jealous of his fucking 10-year-old child. Are you kidding me?
It's crazy. He also became increasingly angry and repeatedly threatened to kill himself, his wife, and his daughter.
Jesus.
He would often get into physical altercations and told people that he once served time in New York for killing a man, but there are absolutely no police records of this happening.
It's not a good thing when someone starts boasting about having killed someone and having served time for it.
Right,
so,
and especially when it's a lie, you know.
Yeah, even weirder.
He was also arrested three times for drunk driving, which is...
Yikes!
Yeah.
Three times and he still has a license? That's crazy.
And as we've seen so many times on this podcast, violent offenders rarely have a singular event.
Ain't that the truth?
Joseph was married before he had met Judith's mother, Maria, and he had 2 children with his first wife, Carla. Carla had left him once, but had returned to him, giving him a second chance. That fell apart again after he threw a cast iron pan at her face in a drunken rage.
Holy shit.
I can't even imagine getting hit by a cast iron pan.
No, that feels like it would break your face.
Yeah, I don't think it connected here. And she got the fuck out and filed for divorce.
Good, thank God. That's so scary.
Those are so heavy. Fuck that.
Yeah.
So years later, Maria and Judith were facing a similar situation. In December of 1986, Maria reported Joseph's threats and physical violence against her to the police. After the police found no physical signs of abuse, she decided not to press charges against him. Yeah.
Hard with no evidence. Ugh.
After the incident with police, Joseph reportedly stopped drinking, but continued to threaten Maria and Judith with violence, including threats to burn their house down.
What the fuck?
Totally fucked up. He also reportedly hid a telegram informing Maria that a relative in Hungary had died, hoping to prevent her from leaving the United States with Judith.
What the fuck?
It's so fucked up. I can't even
That's
imagine.
a really fucked up thing to do, just totally separately. I mean, all this other's fucked up, but that's really messed up.
And that's something that couldn't happen today because of the way we can communicate today versus the 80s.
Right. We would hope at least.
That's true, too. The physical violence continued, with Judith telling a friend that her father threw pots and pans at her mother, resulting in a nosebleed.
Yikes.
This is a 10-year-old.
Yeah, it's so sad to hear like a 10-year-old's witnessing that and like telling people about it. It's so sad.
Then, in 1987, as Judith was preparing to head to the Bahamas temporarily to film Jaws the Revenge, her father reportedly threatened her with a knife, vowing to cut her throat if she failed to return home after the movie was wrapped.
Awful.
A 10-year-old.
If it's within her control where she goes at all.
Exactly. I mean, I understand she's the breadwinner, so in his mind, she's probably the head of the household.
Right, even though she's probably not in control of anything.
It's so fucked up. So she returned to the U.S. 2 months later, but her intense distress and deteriorating mental health was soon apparent.
Oh, as such a young kid. Oh, that's so sad.
Judith started gaining weight and developed compulsive behaviors, resorting in plucking out her own eyelashes and plucking her cat's whiskers due to her growing anxiety.
Yeah, that's trichotillomania or trichotillomania, I think it's called.
Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Yeah, like pulling out your own hair as an anxious habit, yeah.
Wow. Fucked up. In May of 1988, Ruth Hansen, her manager, finally saw in person how bad Judith was when the previously bubbly and happy little girl began crying hysterically before a scheduled audition.
Oh no, poor kid.
Judith was taken by Maria, her mother, to a child psychologist who identified severe physical and emotional abuse and reported her findings to Child Protective Services.
As you must.
As you should, exactly. The investigation was dropped after Maria assured the caseworker that she intended to begin divorce proceedings against Joseph and that she and Judith were moving into an apartment in Panorama City that she had recently rented as a daytime haven from her husband.
Wow.
Can you imagine having to rent a place just to get away from your husband?
Oh, I hope I never have to. That's so awful.
I understand they're afraid, so they can't just immediately get out. But it's crazy to me. And I don't think it would have prevented anything had she done it. Because I think this guy, it would have just pushed him to this point, the point we're going to get to sooner.
Right. Often the separation is the most dangerous part of the abuse.
So Maria's friends urged her to follow through on the plan, but Maria hesitated for fear of losing her home and her belongings. Which in hindsight,
have nothing.
Yeah, which in hindsight, she should have done it anyway.
Yeah.
She told family friends months before the events that she was afraid to go home. And Judith said, "My daddy is miserable. My daddy is drunk every day, and I know he wants to kill my mother."
Oh my God.
That's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying to hear a child say that.
So Maria did file for divorce, but sadly that decision may have been the final straw that broke Joseph.
Oh no.
On July 25th, 1988, Judith was laying in her bed sleeping when her father walked in and shot her a single time in the head.
Oh my God.
After hearing the shot, Maria ran out to help her daughter and was herself shot in the head by Joseph.
Oh.
Joseph would later receive a call from Judith's agent asking where she was because she had missed an appointment with Hanna-Barbera Productions. Hanna-Barbera did like the Flintstones and things like that.
Yep.
He told her that Judith and Maria had both taken the car to San Diego. After 2 days inside the house with the remains of his wife and daughter, Joseph doused their bodies in gasoline and set the house on fire. He then went.
He's doing exactly what he said he would.
Yep. He then went into the garage and shot himself with a .32 caliber pistol.
Fuck him.
A neighbor, Eunice Daly, said that she had heard the gunshots around 8:30 a.m. while she was watering her garden and called 911. And when I say gunshots, I meant the single gunshot where he killed himself.
Or he killed himself, not the other one.
Not the one 2 days before, right? When she heard it and called 911, she thought to herself, he's done it. He said he would kill them and set the house on fire, and he's done it.
Oh my God.
How fucked up is that?
That like she knew he was going to do this.
Because that's how many times he said it.
That's so fucked up that this man is just like still.
Right. And then in the wake of it all, she even said like to police and whoever would listen that he had declared 500 times that he was going to kill his wife.
Holy shit.
At which point she said, I tried to calm him down and tell him, if you kill her, what will happen to your little one? And he replied, I got to kill her too.
Oh my God. And this isn't going to immediately to the police. What the fuck?
Right. And I understand it's like the mid to late 80s here. Like, I think it's the late 80s. But like, call the police. What the fuck are you doing?
Right. But also, like, what do you do when someone just threatens that? Can you actually do anything about that?
Well, the police could at least kind of put it on their radar. They might be able to separate them, get them into protective custody, something.
Yeah, I guess.
Meanwhile, other neighbors claim that Joseph threatened to kill Judith and take his own life, but spare his wife's in order to make her suffer.
That's really fucked up.
That's a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
So Judith and her mother Maria were buried in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in adjoining plots. Judith's grave had remained unmarked until 2004, and I'm assuming they did that for privacy reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, however, in a touching tribute, Ducky's catchphrase of "yep, yep, yep" was written on her gravestone at the memorial park, and the song "Love Survives" from All Dogs Go to Heaven was dedicated to her, and they may have played it at a memorial there.
Oh.
So both The Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven were released after her death.
Oh.
In loving memory of Judith, the closing credits song in the film Love Survives is dedicated to her. In an interview, Don Bluth, the director of both films, praised her as being absolutely astonishing. She understood verbal direction even for the most sophisticated situations. He had remarked on the difficulty of finding child actors for roles and had intended to continue to feature her extensively in his future productions. And unfortunately...
what a shame.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's where this story ends, like with her tragic demise at the hands of a shithead, toxic father.
Wow. Fuck him.
Yeah. So that one's a crazy one. And it's probably, I would say for people today, this is the most famous of the three we're going to cover.
That's so sad.
I hate
it when threats like that aren't taken seriously.
Just because the wife's like, oh no, I'm going to divorce him. Police should have been like, and it's still dangerous.
And it's even more dangerous because you're divorcing him.
Exactly. Fucked up. Fuck this guy.
Fuck this guy. Ugh.
All right, so that is the first of the three cases. And now, Joyous, you're going to tell us another one.
All right, let me pull it up. All right, so our second story today is the story of Dominique Dunn.
Okay.
Dominique Dunn, she was born in Santa Monica, California in November 1959 to parents Ellen and Dominic. Her mom was a ranching heiress, and her father was a writer, actor, and producer in Hollywood.
Okay.
And she was the third child and had two older brothers. And she got her start in the 1979 TV movie Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker.
That sounds both like a horror movie and an erotic thriller.
Yeah, and I don't know which. I mean, obviously it's a TV movie from the
Yeah, it's definitely
late 70s, so
yeah,
I've
it's
never seen
definitely
it.
not erotica.
But she was 20, so she was 20 years old in that movie.
Also, it could have been, but if it was a TV movie, we're going to assume they just didn't have good titles back then.
Yeah. And this in 1979? Yeah.
Yeah.
So after her start in 1979, she went on to star in these shows like Lou Grant, Family, Heart to Heart, and Fame.
Okay.
None of which I have heard of.
I was
but,
going to say, I
they're
remember some
popular.
of them. Yeah, I remember some of them. I was a kid. My mother was watching them.
That makes sense. Yeah. Her true rise to fame came in 1982 when she starred in Poltergeist, and she was also set to star in the sequel as well.
Yeah, Poltergeist, I know that there's a kind of a curse with all those movies.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, after every Poltergeist movies, one of the cast members died.
Well, I hope they stopped making them.
They did after the third one, and then technically the third one, they knew the girl was sick. So that one's not a big surprise. And it's really this case, I think, is the one that was like the most like, oh shit, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So at the time of her death, she was in the midst of filming the miniseries V, which was released the following year in her memory.
Which, by the way, is one of my favorite 80s sci-fi anything.
Oh, yeah?
So they remade that in like the early 2000s, around 2007, or the mid 2000s, 2007, I think. But it's basically about aliens that come down and they want to trade technology for our resources. But what they don't tell you is they're here to steal our water and take us for food. And And they're actually lizards underneath this fake human-looking skin. And the special effects in the 80s were not great, so when you watch it, it's sort of laughable. But
oh, that sounds kind of great. I love that.
It's so good, and it's so cheesy because there's
I love that.
Yeah, there's all these like obvious like like hidden messages, whatever. But like, but it's so funny, and it was so good, and it was too bad she wasn't a part of it because the character she was up for was this one that got pregnant by an alien and gave birth to like these hybrids. So
oh,
good.
Weird.
So good. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Anyway, she met John Sweeney, who was a sous chef at a restaurant at a party in 1981.
I can see why women date chefs. They're good. They're like we cook.
Yeah, food is good. I dated a chef once. I was eating good.
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense.
I was gaining weight and I wasn't mad about it.
Well, if they're really good chefs, you don't gain weight from the food they cook. Just saying.
Well, unless it's really decadent and I'm eating a lot of it.
That's true. Like if they're bakers and it's all just sweets.
Yeah. The chef I dated used to bring me home pastries from the restaurant, like a bakery. Oh man.
Exactly. So yeah, I can see where you were gaining weight, but didn't give a fuck.
Worth it. They had a whirlwind romance, and within a few weeks, they rented a house together.
Wow, that's fast.
Kind of crazy to me.
That's Hollywood. They kind of move fast in that lifestyle.
That makes sense. Here we're slow. It's cold, and you're like you don't move in with someone until you've known each other for 3 years. That's
right. But there, it's like, hey, my career could take off tomorrow. We got to move in together.
Right. Let's split the rent. The relationship quickly turned sour, unfortunately, when Sweeney started to become aggressive and physically abusive to her.
Ugh.
In August 27th, 1982 incident, Sweeney allegedly grabbed Dominique by her hair and yanked her so hard that handfuls of her hair came out from the root.
Fuck that. Oh my
It's
God.
Insanely hard.
I would kill a motherfucker for doing something like that to anyone I knew.
Someone should have.
Yeah.
So she was terrified. She leaves to go to her mother's house, where he follows her, and then he's banging on the doors and windows to be let in.
Where are the police?
Well, her mom told him to leave, or she'd call the police.
Okay.
And then he left after that threat.
Crazy.
So after a few days to calm down, Dominique returned to their shared home.
I'm guessing not to get her stuff.
Yeah, no, she returned to move back in.
That sucks.
A month later, there was another domestic dispute when Sweeney allegedly strangled Dominique, and a neighbor heard the gagging sounds and attempted to intervene.
Oh my God.
Horrible. Like that you could hear that through the walls.
That's fucking crazy.
Under the pretense of going to the bathroom, she escaped out of the window and took off in her car, which he then jumped on the hood of, trying to stop her from getting away.
This sounds like a bad movie.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And after that, she did call off the relationship.
Oh, good. She needed to.
For real.
But we know that's
like
not...
we said earlier, that's
Yeah.
the most dangerous part.
Yeah, and we know this isn't going to end well.
No, we do know that. We're talking about it, so that means it ends badly.
Exactly.
A month later, he showed up at her house while she was running lines with another actor. He insisted on speaking to her, so Dominique met him outside the house while the other actor stayed indoors.
Which makes sense. I guess if you're going to have an argument with an ex-boyfriend in front of a friend, you're going to kind of be like, let me step outside.
Let me handle this. Like, it's probably worse if he sees her with another guy. Like, it's...
Right, and if you're outside, you're probably feeling safer.
Right, exactly. Hopefully for witnesses, but...
Right.
Unfortunately, their conversation turned violent, leading the friend inside to call the police after Sweeney had strangled Dominique to the point of unconsciousness.
Ugh, fucking Christ.
He confessed to the police that he killed Dominique when they arrived, and he told them, "I killed my girlfriend and I tried to kill myself. I fucked up. I can't believe I did something that will put me behind bars forever. Man, I blew it. I killed her."
The fuck is wrong? I mean, I know we don't understand what's wrong with people, but I want to know, when he says he killed her and he tried to kill himself, what did he do to try to kill himself in her driveway?
I don't know.
What, did he put his mouth and nose in a fucking exhaust pipe on a car? And What?
I don't know if that's just something he's saying, or maybe
Yeah.
he like try to punch himself. I don't know. It sounds like a weird situation.
Yeah, it sounds like bullshit. Yeah.
He also said, "I didn't think I choked her that hard. I just kept on choking her."
Ugh.
And by the time she arrived at the hospital, her heart had stopped beating.
I'm telling you, I wish I could go back in time and make all these type of people disappear before they do what they've done.
For real.
Imagine how much better the world would be.
Yeah.
Ugh, so
A lot fucking better. Except you would be the one behind bars.
Well, not if I'm traveling back in time, taking them out one at a time, and nobody knows it was me.
Okay. We're doing a time travel situation. Right,
Yeah, that's what
right.
I mean. Like, kind of like a Thanos. I just show up and they're gone. You know what I mean?
Okay. Love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Love that plan.
That was how it played out in my head. I realize how you imagined it now.
Yes. At the hospital, Dominique was able to be revived by machines, but she was declared brain dead. And 5 days later, her parents consented to remove her from life support.
I fully support that.
Yeah, because once you're brain dead, there's really no hope in coming back.
Yeah.
In court, Sweeney was charged with first-degree murder, to which he pleaded not guilty, arguing that he had not planned to hurt her, and he acted in the heat of passion after a frustrating conversation in which she allegedly told him she had no plans of a future with him.
So he's going for second-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the judge did grant that. She granted the attorney the request to change the charge to second-degree murder or manslaughter, as they didn't have sufficient evidence to try him for first-degree murder, since they couldn't say it was predetermined.
And, you know, he may not have intended to kill her, but the number of times he was violent against her beforehand should have been a mitigating factor.
And that's like something I really think they should consider, is when there have been past violent incidents, like domestic violence history, like that feels like you've tried before.
Yeah, exactly. Those feel like attempted murder acts, you know, and,
Yeah.
and I think they should be weighed in. And I understand that they
Right.
don't want to, I understand why the justice system doesn't want to have some past events trickle in, but I think you need the pattern, and I think that should be, make first-degree murder a thing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. I'm with you there.
Fucking crazy.
Ultimately, the jury acquitted him of second-degree murder, which is fucked.
Yeah.
But they did find him guilty of voluntary manslaughter and assault, which, like, fucking voluntary manslaughter? What the fuck? That's fucking murder. Whatever.
I voluntarily, accidentally killed someone.
Right. It's such bullshit. If you're choking someone out like that, I don't want to fucking hear it about it being, oh, well, I didn't know it would kill them.
Yeah. Like, I mean, to me, that's like...
I'm so tired of that.
Yeah, the only way you accidentally killed someone during a choking event is some like passionate, consensual shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the bedroom, like I can sort of see that, but
if
not...
you're choking someone with the intent to hurt them, I don't want to hear it.
Uh,
I don't want to hear it.
Exactly. In their driveway. You know what I mean?
In their driveway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
So frustratingly, he was sentenced to only 6.5 years in prison, of which he only served 2.5.
Wow. This motherfucker. You know what the sad part is? He was out before the sequel to I think he was out right after, or before the sequel to Poltergeist was out.
Fucked.
Yeah.
Fucked.
Yeah. Miserable.
Yeah. And so after he gets out, he was hired as a head chef at a highly rated restaurant in Santa Monica. Fucked.
Yeah. They clearly didn't know who they hired.
Well, yeah, and I know a lot of jobs like that will, like, because it's not directly in contact with the public, like, they'll give ex-cons a chance, which is often a good thing, like, especially if a non-violent offender.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I agree, because I have ex-cons working in my kitchen, and yeah, we, you know, they're just whatever, washing dishes and, you know, prepping food. They're not hurting anybody. They're not doing any crimes, and they're just trying to make their lives better again. So I support that, but none of them ever killed somebody.
Right, exactly. That's important. So after he was hired as his head chef, Dominique's family would stand outside the restaurant in protest after hearing the news, and they would hand out flyers that read, "The food you will eat tonight was cooked by the hands that killed Dominique Dunn."
That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck up his life. 2.5 years is not enough.
Yeah, I'm all for that. In fact, I'm sure he's not still alive or working at restaurants to this day, but if he is, I say we do that now.
For real. Eventually, he quit because of the protests, and he left Los Angeles.
Which, yeah, he would need to do.
In the mid-90s, a Florida man reached out to Dominique's father about an article that he wrote regarding his daughter's death, and he asked if the John Sweeney that was engaged to his daughter was the very same who served time for Dominique's death.
Oh, my God.
Which, yes. So Dominique's brother, Griffin, quickly contacted the woman and informed her, yeah, this is this man's past.
Wow. I'm glad that they looked into that. Yeah.
For real. It's a good reminder. Google people.
Well, this was before Google. This was the mid-90s.
Mid-90s. Yeah, I guess I don't know when Google started, if I'm being honest.
No, the mid-90s is when the internet started.
Damn. Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah.
So I don't know how she figured this out, but.
I mean, newspaper articles. Maybe she hired a private investigator, and good for her.
Yeah, she's like, this guy's sus. Let's figure out what's going on here.
He probably put his hands on her daughter, and that prompted
she was like,
her.
This doesn't come from nowhere.
Exactly.
So unfortunately, then he changed his name, and then Dominique's father did hire a private investigator to track him down to figure out where he moved after he changed his name. But eventually, he just let it go. And he said, I don't know where he is. I don't want to know where he is. It's much healthier.
Yeah, I can see where he needed to move on.
Yeah, where it's just like he can protect some people, but like it's just like it's going to drive him insane trying to follow this man his whole life.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to dedicate my life to it, but there's a part of me that wishes we knew where he was right now, because I'd love to fuck with him. Yeah.
So following his daughter's death, Dominic became committed to his career as a crime writer after being a successful Hollywood producer beforehand.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. During the trial, he wrote down everything he was feeling and his thoughts on the process, per the advice of one of his coworkers. And then after that, he published his work in an in-depth article for Vanity Fair.
Wow.
Yeah. His son told People he wrote this devastating piece about what a family goes through who had no experience in the court judicial system and what we went through. It's a document that's like a handbook for what families should prepare for. Which is just like so sad that would have to exist.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Like, it's good that it exists. It's tragic that it has to exist.
Mm-hmm. And the following decades, he covered other cases like the O.J. Simpson trial in 1995 and the Menendez brothers trial in 1993.
Wow. That's a crazy time period. Sorry, that I just realized that all happened in a window there. That's a crazy time period for Los Angeles.
Yeah, for real.
Fuck. In fact, all three of these take place roughly in the 80s in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Weird. That was unintentional.
Yeah. Well, unintentional theming.
Right?
Dominic passed away on August 26, 2009 at 83 years old.
Wow.
Her mother, on the other hand, Ellen, turned to advocacy work after her daughter's death, and she started the Justice for Homicide Victims Foundation.
That's cool. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. And in 1989, she was recognized by former President George H.W. Bush for her contributions.
That's cool. George
Yeah.
H.W. Bush didn't preside over a lot of good things, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know how much he was directly involved with that, but, pretty cool.
No, but at least he was there and acknowledged her. That's still pretty cool.
Yeah. And she passed away in 1997 at 64 years old.
Oh, she was young compared to the father. The father lived
Yeah,
longer,
he died 10 years later,
yeah.
or 12 years later. Dominique's older brother, Griffin, continues to work in Hollywood and is also an author. And in June 2024, so early this year, published the memoir, The Friday Afternoon Club, a family memoir, which reflected on his family's history and his own.
That's pretty cool.
Griffin wrote, I loved going back to my memories of her as a little girl that Alex and I adored. That's her other brother. She seemed to know who she was from the age of 4 or 5 and had such confidence, far more than us. She would boss us around and we would do everything we could to please her. It was just kind of cute.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Her case returned to the national spotlight when Nathan Lane portrayed Dominic in Ryan Murphy's Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, which was released in Netflix in September 2024.
Yeah, I watched the first couple episodes, but I don't think they're portraying the Menendez brothers right, so I stopped watching.
Interesting. I was like, I love Nathan Lane, but it's not worth watching.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is a little side note, a little tangent here, but so the Menendez brothers they killed their parents. Long story short, they killed their parents, but a lot of it had to do with the abuses that they both suffered at the hands of their father, in particular sexual assaults. And their mother ignored it, and there was constant threats of, they'd overhear their parents say stupid shit like, oh my God, I'll kill him kind of thing. So they claimed at the time that they were basically preemptively self-defending themselves. And now it's coming more to light that because of the sexual abuse, maybe they shouldn't have both gotten life in prison for it. Maybe they should be eligible for parole. It's a whole thing. Whatever. There was rumors that they did things to each other as kids because they didn't understand, because they were young and their father's abusing them. They didn't understand the consequences, or that things were wrong. But in the show Monsters, this series, they're like making out with each other at a party full of friends. And I'm like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't buy this. Like, I don't think this is how it went down. So, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is accurate. But I didn't like their portrayal. And I understand that they killed their parents. They shouldn't be sympathetic. But at the same time, like, portray them in a realistic way. Don't do this. I don't know what the hell that really was.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, so I couldn't get past, I think it was the second episode. I was like, I'm good,
Yeah, I can't blame you there. That's weird.
I highly recommend watching. There's a documentary out there that covers it better than that like actor series one did. So I'd recommend that one. And maybe someday we'll cover this, but I don't know, maybe. It might be a For Joyous's information despite this little 5-minute diatribe.
Yeah, now I know a little too much. Dominique's coverage of the trial, in which Lyle and Eric were being tried for the murder of their parents, like we just talked about, was key to making it become the massive media sensation that it was. He was so passionate about the stories that he covered, often immersing himself fully in them, but he didn't claim to be necessarily a very unbiased source.
Right, which makes sense.
Yeah. His son was quoted saying, if he wrote about Phil Spector, he talked about Lana Clarkson and not as a third-rate actress as the media continue to describe her, he said. Or during OJ, he sat with the Browns and Nicole's family. He always looked at it from the rights of the victim.
Which is, again, the way they should be doing it.
Yes, the way you would hope. I mean, I understand the importance of unbiased coverage, but it's important that someone is sitting there and telling these stories.
And telling them in a compassionate way for the people who are suffering.
And that is the story of Dominique Dunn.
That one's tragic. Have you ever seen Poltergeist?
Maybe. I mean, you probably showed it to me at one point, but probably when I was young.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's a haunted house story. There's a little girl with blonde hair that gets sucked into a closet and disappears, and they hear her voice through the television. It's super creepy. There were some great moments, especially for the time. But Dominique's character is the older sister, and she's
Mhm.
not in it a lot. You know, because she's
Gotcha.
a teenager, so at some point she's just like, yeah, this is some crazy shit. I'm going to my friend's house, you know. So, and then she shows up
Yes.
again at the very end. So her role was limited, which was unfortunate now because it would have been great to see her acting more, you know.
Mhm.
But I do remember hearing about her death after, I think it was the second movie had come out. There was another actor who was in the second one that also died after the movie. And so it was
Woof.
kind of like, wow, that's really a creepy coincidence. And then after the third movie, the little blonde girl, she dies, but hers was a medical condition.
Mm.
But then they did a TV series about Poltergeist, and apparently that set was like cursed. So like they should never touch that property again.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't.
Yeah, well, they probably will eventually.
Money's money, and God knows Hollywood won't come up with a new idea to save their lives.
Yeah, that's how it feels. Yeah. All right, so this last case is one we discussed briefly many episodes ago. This is the case that kind of brought California around to creating the first anti-stalker laws.
Wow.
Yes, we did just like I don't. You probably won't remember like we only discussed the basics. You probably won't remember it, which is fine, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a big one, and I was holding off on doing this, and I'm glad we're pairing it up with these other two because it's a good pair. Like I guess pairing is two. What do you call it when you bring three things together? I was gonna say a trying.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if there's a word for
I don't
that,
think there is. Yeah, a grouping, I guess.
A grouping, yes.
All right, so this is the story of Rebecca Shaeffer.
Rebecca Shaeffer. That name does sound familiar to me, but
Yeah, we did bring it up a little bit, but again, we're gonna dive in. I even have a little teaser set up. So Rebecca Shaeffer thought it was a sweet fan that was sending her stuffed animals and other little gifts at the studio where she was filming her sitcom, My Sister Sam. Playing a spunky teen who goes to live with her photographer sister in San Francisco was her big break, and the work kept coming in after the show was canceled in 1988. Rebecca co-starred in the racy, big-screen farce called Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills in 1989.
what do you mean by a farce?
Farce, like a comedy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she had wrapped the TV movie Voyage of Terror, and she was in the movie The End of Innocence. She was even said to be in the running for the lead in an upcoming romantic comedy called Pretty Woman.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and as you know, obviously Julia Roberts got that, and that helped launch her into superstardom.
Mm-hmm.
So on the morning of July 18th, 1989, the 21-year-old from Oregon was waiting for a potentially life-changing delivery. Rebecca was scheduled to audition later that day for the very coveted role of Michael Corleone's daughter, Mary, in The Godfather Part 3 for director Francis Ford Coppola.
Dang, yeah, that is a really big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm just going to go on record and say this moment in time sucks because I understand that Francis Ford Coppola put his daughter in the role of Mary, but she's the worst part of that movie, and everyone agrees on that. So,
Dang, all right, well, I've never seen that movie, so I'm going to take your word for it.
yeah, and had Rebecca not been killed, she might have gotten that role, and we would have gotten a slightly better movie. Because
if only.
I know, this sucks. Again, I wish I could go back in time and stop these monsters. So she was expecting a messenger to drop the script off at her West Hollywood apartment any minute. So when the bell rang at 10:15 a.m., Rebecca went to answer the door because her intercom at her apartment wasn't working. That was when she was fatally shot by 19-year-old Robert John Bardot.
Oh, geez, no, no warning.
Well, we're going to get into that in a little more detail. I did it that way on purpose.
Right.
So as I said, this is the case of Rebecca Shaeffer and how her murder changed the way people looked at stalkers and changed the laws surrounding them. So Rebecca was born on November 6, 1967 in Eugene, Oregon. According to her mother, Rebecca had entertained the idea of becoming a rabbi before moving to New York to pursue modeling.
Wild.
Can you imagine?
You know, when you're young, you entertain a bunch of thoughts.
I guess that's true. That's true. She enrolled at professional children's school in Manhattan, and she had to room with 6 other models. And she was always a good person who never lost friends or her perspective.
Wow.
Rebecca also briefly modeled in Japan before making her TV debut in 1985 on the soap opera One Life to Live. Her first movie role was a little part in Woody Allen's 1987 comedy Radio Days. So she liked to horseback ride and just spend time on a mountaintop. She lived a very quiet life. She was sensitive and kind of a loner. She liked to stay at home and read and play with her cat. So instead of going out and partying like most kids her age, she's quite subdued, almost an old soul.
Yeah.
She had said that she liked classical music and never went to any of the Hollywood parties.
Dang.
So after arriving in LA for the first few months, Rebecca lived with Pam Dauber, which was her co-star on the TV show My Sister Sam. And Pam Dauber is also famous for the Mork and Mindy TV show, where she worked side by side with the late, great Robin Williams.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's such a funny show. I mean, Robin Williams is brilliant.
Yes, and everything he's ever been in.
Yes. And Pam Dauber's husband obviously still also lived with them, and that's Mark Harmon, who was later known for his role in the 80s comedy Summer School and would later be on the TV show NCIS.
I was like, yeah, his name sounds familiar.
Yeah, they're like living with 2 famous people. How great a way to start your career.
Truly.
Eventually, Rebecca moved out, first to an apartment in the hills above Sunset Strip, but she worried a lot about being too isolated up there. She left that for a building on Sweetser Avenue in West Hollywood. Now, Pam Dauber, who had her own experience with a stalker beforehand, told her, never put your real name on your mailbox.
That is very smart.
And Pam also noted that Rebecca didn't listen to that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. She also told her to put her business manager's address on her driver's license so that she couldn't be found.
That's also very smart.
Yeah, it's actually kind of brilliant. I never really thought of it that way. But yeah, that's what they should have been doing. Pretty much every one of them should have been required to put maybe the studio's address or something.
Yeah, just to be careful.
So Pam was obviously correct, as a man Rebecca did not know was becoming obsessed with her many miles away.
Ugh.
Robert Bardot was born on January 2nd, 1970, and was considered a misfit from Tucson, Arizona. He was a high school dropout who had once worked the grill at a Jack in the Box but couldn't hold down a job. He had been fixated on Rebecca for 4 years before trying to contact her.
Oh no, that's a long time.
You know, I remember having my little crushes in high school, but I mean, and some of them lasted years, but come on, get
Right,
over
let's
it.
move on.
Like, I remember, and this is funny side note, I had a thing for the rock star Lita Ford, right? Back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
She was hot, big blonde hair. Oh my God, loved Lita Ford. I met her after she played a show, like maybe 10 years ago. So we're talking 2000 and whatever, 10, 12, whatever. And I remember sitting there, I was talking with her as she was signing something for me. And I told her, I'm like, yeah, I used to have this big poster of you in my wall. And she literally leaned into me and said, so that poster in your right hand, huh? It's so
Oh, that's
funny.
hilarious.
But like, she had a good sense of humor about it because she understood, and she was also, obviously, I'm not stalking her, she's safe.
Right.
But it's pretty funny in hindsight. So I think there's a natural thing for young boys to have that celebrity fixation.
I mean, for any young people.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're right. Girls do the same thing. Like the boy bands are
girls
famous.
get made fun of it, or get made fun of for it a whole lot more.
Yes, and that's why boy bands exist. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
So Bardot was a freshman in high school when he first saw Rebecca in a commercial for her show My Sister Sam in the summer of '86. He taped every episode of My Sister Sam in which she played a bubbly, innocent teenager, and he felt that they were kindred spirits because they were both shy and genuine, and he started to send her tokens of his affection.
Ah, yes, her television character is certainly who she is in real life.
You know? I mean, some people think that shit, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's hard not to. It's hard not to be parasocial.
Well, and
get it.
I think today it's easier to see who people really are because they can be live on social media.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah, where in the 80s you probably thought that you may have actually thought that. Clearly he did.
Yeah.
So once she actually sent him a personalized response telling him that his letter was one of the nicest she had received.
She's being real nice.
She's being a sweetheart. And her friends had even warned her that even the most innocuous personal note could be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And they were right.
Unfortunately, they were right.
Yes, because this only inflamed his fixation.
Unfortunately, you can't give him an inch, he'll take a mile.
Exactly. But Rebecca's father, who's a psychologist in Portland, he read Bardot's letters and he said that he perceived no threat from him.
Well, he's a man. Sorry.
That's true. He said he thought they reflected just another strange kid who wanted someone to pay attention to him. Which is true.
Well, that is true.
Yeah. But it's worse than that.
Yikes.
So Bardot had taken a Greyhound bus to Los Angeles, where he rented a cheap hotel and found his way to the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank with flowers and a teddy bear.
Oh, no.
He insisted on seeing Rebecca. Now, the security guard there thought, this is just another harmless, lovesick fan waiting to see a star. There are at least a couple here every week.
I'm sure there were.
So the security guard drove Bardot back to his hotel and told him to go home to Tucson, which I have to say is pretty cool of that security guard because he really should have just told him to kick rocks.
Right. Like, there's no need to, drive him. That was awful nice.
Yeah, that was far nicer than I would have been.
Yeah, I was just been like, what are you doing here? Bye.
So the 19-year-old Bardot, however, remained fixated on Rebecca and felt personally betrayed when she appeared in a love scene in the movie Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills.
Jesus.
Yeah. Now, at this point, he had also studied celebrity stalkers.
No.
He was literally studying the people who came before him.
Ew, no, I hate it.
He had visited the apartment building in New York where John Lennon was shot.
What the fuck? Oh, I hate that.
He said he got the idea to hire a private investigator from reading a news article about Arthur Richard Jackson, who was in prison for stabbing actress Teresa Saldana outside her home in 1982. Now,
that's fucked up.
Quick side note, a native of Scotland, Arthur Richard Jackson was in the U.S. illegally and had attempted but wasn't able to buy a gun because he didn't have a U.S. driver's license.
Wow.
Jackson.
The one time someone's ever not successfully bought a gun in this country.
Well,
you'd love to see it.
Agreed, but Jackson hired a private investigator to find Teresa's address and he attacked her. A water delivery man came upon the attack in progress and wrestled Jackson to the ground, allowing Teresa to get away.
Wow.
Jackson was convicted of attempted murder and inflicting great bodily injury and sentenced to the then maximum prison sentence of 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he was granted parole in 1989, but was never released. Instead, he ended up being sentenced to almost 6 more years for sending Teresa death threats.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
After?
Yeah, he was sending her death threats from prison. So once he was released, they rearrested him, and he got 6 more years.
Good. What the?
Right?
Psycho.
So back to our case. Sadly, Rebecca was not the only young female celebrity Bardot developed an interest in.
Oh, no.
He tried to find pop singers Debbie Gibson and Tiffany, as well as Samantha Smith. Now, you may not know Debbie Gibson or Tiffany, but they were pop stars in the 80s. But you probably really don't know Samantha Smith.
That's correct.
Samantha Smith was an American peace activist and child actress from Manchester, Maine, who became famous for her anti-war outreaches during the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Oh, hell yeah.
In 1982, at 10 years old, Samantha wrote a letter to the newly appointed General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Yuri Andropov, and received a personal reply.
Damn, what the fuck?
And that reply came with an invitation to visit the Soviet Union, which she accepted.
What?
Yeah. She was called the Goodwill...
During the Cold War?
During the Cold War. She was called the Goodwill Ambassador.
Wow.
This was a big deal. I remember I wasn't much older than this girl. In fact, I was probably the same age. And I remember hearing about this.
That's nuts.
Now, crazy enough, Samantha and her father did die in a plane crash in 1985. There's no record of any connection to it being from either government or anything crazy like that. But
right.
It's still tragic and sad, and I really hope it wasn't, political. That would be crazy.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
But he became obsessed with her as well. And she's 10 years old.
Ew.
Yeah, right? Fucking guy. So back to Scumbag Bardot, though. Rebecca Shaeffer was the one of his obsessions that he was able to find because he paid $250 to a private investigator who got her home address from the DMV.
Ugh.
Bardot got his older brother to buy him a gun, as his own attempt was unsuccessful because he told the gun store owner that he had a history of mental illness.
Okay. Idiot.
Right. Now, Bardot's brother bought the gun, but told him he could only use it when they were together for target shooting. The gun he bought him was a .357 Magnum, which is a big, powerful gun. Bardot then took
You don't trust someone with a gun, don't fucking buy them one, you dumbass.
It blows me away. Like, I understand he was like, okay, we can only use this together. Great. Then you keep the gun.
Yeah, what?
Fucking crazy. So Bardot took another Greyhound bus to Los Angeles, this time with his .357 Magnum. On the morning of July 18th, 1989, as Rebecca was preparing to audition for the role in The Godfather 3, she was expecting that script to be delivered. Witnesses later recalled seeing Bardot on Rebecca's street, showing passerbys her photo and asking if they knew where she lived.
Oh my God.
When Bardot rang her doorbell and she answered, he would later tell investigators that he was amazed that she was the one who answered the door, personally. He thought...
What did he think was going to happen?
That maybe she had a butler or a servant or something. I don't know. But he sat there thinking in his head, it's her. There she is. She's right there in front of me. She wasn't dressed up glamorously. She's just a regular person. Just me and her. They chatted briefly as Bardot showed her the letter that she had sent him and the autographed photo that she had sent. He told her he was her biggest fan. She politely told him that she had an interview to get ready for. She shook his hand and said to him, "Please take care."
Wow.
Bardot left, and after eating dinner at a nearby diner, he returned. He claimed that he had forgotten to give her another letter and a CD that he had brought just for her. So he got to her house, he rings the bell, and this time when she gets to the door, she seems annoyed with him. She said, "You came to my door again? Hurry up, I don't have much time." According to him, she made him feel like he was bothering her.
'Cause he fucking was.
Absolutely. Bardot explained to his psychiatrist that he felt he'd been provoked.
What?
He said...
That's insane.
He said, quote, "I thought that was a very callous thing to say to a fan," unquote.
Oh, he really just thinks he's fucking entitled to her.
Yep.
That's crazy.
He recalled telling her, "I forgot to give you something," and then he pulled out the gun and shot her. Rebecca said after being shot, Why?
Yup.
Neighbors heard a shot and screams as Bardot ran up the street. He was literally running away in flip-flops, and he took his copy of the book The Catcher in the Rye that he had been carrying.
Oh, are you kidding me?
And he threw it on a nearby rooftop. Yeah, I think this is
fucking brings his ew.
I think this is one of the reasons why that book is like flagged.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is way before that was a thing. So one of her neighbors had come running outside when he heard the gunshots and said she was lying on the ground, wearing nothing but a little black bathrobe. Her eyes were open, staring. It looked to me as though she was already dead.
Oh.
Rebecca was pronounced dead at the Los Angeles Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, less than a mile from her apartment. The next day, in Tucson, police found Bardot running in freeway traffic, apparently trying to kill himself. When the cops...
He had a gun. What the fuck? So hard, dude.
I know, right? When the cops stopped him, he put his head on the squad car and sobbed. He said he had shot someone. He said, quote, "My feelings for her were uncontrollable. I was a fan of hers, and I may have carried it too far," unquote.
May have is an interesting.
What a douchebag.
Yeah. Go fuck yourself and die, dude.
This poor woman had so much ahead of her.
Mm-hmm.
And because this entitled little shit, this could seriously be the first incel.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not the first, but like first of, like, I don't know. I mean, I can't even call him the official, but like, to me, he's an incel. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
As his trial began, more than 2 years later, prosecutor Marcia Clark had to prove he was guilty of first-degree murder with an enhancement for laying in wait, which would send him away for life.
Good.
Bardot's public defender argued for second-degree murder, saying that he had acted on impulse rather than on premeditation.
Bullshit, he brought a gun.
If her argument prevailed, Bardot might one day walk free. Police in LA received a tip from a woman in Tennessee who said Bardot was obsessed with Rebecca. This woman turned out to be his sister. He had written...
Wow.
Yeah, right? He had written her in Knoxville before leaving again for LA, and he said, quote, "I have an obsession with the unobtainable, and I have to eliminate something that I cannot attain," unquote.
What? Yeah, that's fucking premeditated as fuck.
Totally premeditated.
He can't say some bullshit that it was a crime of passion or whatever because she rejected him. He brought a gun. Yeah, and he premeditated it.
He bringing the gun. I mean, it'd be one thing if he was going into a shitty neighborhood and he was bringing it for self-defense, but no, he had plenty of time to think that through.
Yep.
At the trial, Bardot's defense attorney portrayed Bardot as a victim of mental illness and parental neglect, and that he was a sick young man who suffered from schizophrenia and wanted to be famous.
That sounds like a load of shit.
Yeah. Marcia Clark argued that Bardot killed Rebecca for fame and that he had not been under the influence of any command delusions, such as voices ordering him to kill, when he gunned her down.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Dino Fulgoni agreed that Bardot, who waived a jury trial, had laid in wait, saying that he may have had schizophrenia, but his condition did not preclude premeditation.
Yep.
Now, adding to the bizarreness of the proceedings, Bardot told someone that he was further inspired by the U2 song Exit off of their album Joshua Tree about religious fanaticism turning deadly.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that song was played in court, and it reportedly seemed to invigorate Bardot, who began banging his knees like a drum. Yeah, fucking idiot.
Weird fucking behavior.
So that was the only time he showed any kind of enthusiasm. Otherwise, he sat there without moving, looking quite forlorn and downcast.
Ugh.
So after that information came out, U2, the band, didn't perform the song Exit again live until 2017.
Wow.
And the only reason they played it was because on that particular tour, they had decided to play the entire album Joshua Tree from start to finish. Fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So in the end, the judge gave Bardot life without the possibility of parole.
Good.
In 2007, at Mule Creek State Prison, Another inmate stabbed him 11 times with an improvised blade.
Whoop.
Unfortunately,
Look at
unfortunately, he survived.
that. Well, survive to suffer.
Yeah, good. Fuck him. Exactly. Gavin DeBecker, who studied stalkers, explained the nature of their obsessions and motivations. Quote, he doesn't love her. He doesn't know her. She's pixels on a screen. That's all. This is very common. They start with this love and that they attach to this person that they don't know, and then they find a reason to turn on them. Unquote.
Right. It's like easy to imagine a betrayal of yourself when the person doesn't even know you.
Yeah, she didn't betray him in any way. The fact that she even spoke to him at the door says a lot about how good a person Rebecca Shaeffer was.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. Because if you I've bumped into many celebrities walking through either Palm Springs or LA, and the only one who stopped and talked to me was Bob Hope, who you probably don't remember, but he's someone that
I know of him.
Okay, sorry. But he was someone my grandparents loved. And he was
right.
And he was highly supportive of the troops. So the fact that he bumped into a bunch of Marines walking down the street in Palm Springs, he was happy to stop and talk to us.
Well, that's awfully nice.
But he put it realistically, though, that could be a dangerous situation for him.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't in danger. We were a group of Marines, but that doesn't mean he wasn't in danger.
Right. I mean, you have guns, right?
Not in that moment, no. We were in civilian clothes. While Rebecca's death was a devastating personal loss for her loved ones, the circumstances of the killing also jolted first the Hollywood community and then the entire state of California. Numerous celebrities, and some of these are more modern, but numerous celebrities have been harassed by stalkers over the years, including Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, Kendall Jenner, and Taylor Swift.
In this day and age, I'd be shocked if any of them hadn't been. Like, if any
That's true
celebrity
too.
had never been stalked, especially given, like, people are crazy online.
Yeah, I was going to say the access people have on social media, they probably get the whole idea of, like, DMs is probably ridiculous for people like this.
Yeah.
But while it wasn't the only cause for action, it wasn't until after Rebecca's murder and stalking in and of itself that it was finally classified as a crime. In 1990,
Good.
Yes, I agree. In 1990, California became the first state to pass anti-stalking laws. In addition to Rebecca, 4 other women had been killed in Orange County that previous year, despite having restraining orders in place.
That's crazy.
It's so fucked up. And eventually, the rest of the country would follow suit in terms of these anti-stalking laws.
Good.
The Screen Actors Guild also got involved in lobbying the state to strengthen privacy protections, and California subsequently restricted the accessibility of personal information, such as home addresses, from the DMV.
Good.
Now,
That's very good.
Agreed. And honestly, they should find ways to keep that even more private. I understand hackers exist, but like you should not be able to just type in someone's name and get an address because you paid some private company money.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Not at all. So Brad Pitt, who at the time of Rebecca's murder was still relatively unknown, had lived down the street from her. And he said, it's no consolation, but the impact of her loss and the sense of awareness and safety for young actors became huge. It's crazy to think that here's Brad Pitt being unknown and he's like, oh, fuck,
Like, I need to think about this. Like, this is really scary.
Right. And
yeah, that's wild.
So the case also inspired the Los Angeles Police Department to launch a threat assessment unit and fueled the rapid growth of the now enormous private threat assessment industry, which I didn't even know was really a thing.
Yeah, what is that?
So basically there's now, at least in Los Angeles, there's now a group, like a law enforcement agency, or maybe it's a private agency, that basically figure out how much of a threat you're in as a public figure in terms of your private life.
Ooh, like looking at like how credible any threats are,
Exactly.
and like sure, like reading comments and stuff like that.
It's crazy.
It's really sad that has to exist, but it's sad that a lot of things have to exist, I guess.
Agreed. Lawmakers also limited the information the DMV could legally release, a measure whose usefulness has since actually withered because of the internet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Marcia Clark said, "Thank goodness these laws were put in place before the explosion of the internet." So she's saying
Yeah,
like some
for
things
real.
are still protected.
For real.
So now at 54 years old, Bardot remains behind bars at Avenel State Prison in California, where I hope he has a miserable fucking day every day.
Truly. That's the end of every case. Is I truly hope he's fucking miserable.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'm glad that guy stabbed him 11 times, and I hope he does it again. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I hope he has a permanent injury. I hope he suffers.
I hope he walks back and like that guy shows up and is like, "Oh, you're annoyed to see me?"
Yeah, I hope he gets stabbed again.
Yeah, fuck that guy. And that is the case of Rebecca Shaeffer.
Damn.
I know. These are 3 tragic cases, and it's like they all happen at the same time. So I'm glad, like roughly. So I'm glad that these laws were put in place, but I agree with you with the internet and social media. It's going to be even worse now, which is why all of them have bodyguards now.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking that they ever didn't, but it's just sad that there's imminent threat all the time because people are just so fucked up, and people like there's a whole other conversation about like parasocial relationships and people feeling like celebrities owe them something.
Exactly.
Or like they feel like they have some sort of friendship with someone just because they watch so much of that other person's life. And they don't actually know them at all.
And it's not even their real life.
Right. It's a curated version of your life.
It's not even that. You're playing someone else in most cases.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, like modern times, sure. Like you can't watch a YouTube video or whatever, Instagram or TikTok and think that what you're seeing is really their life. It's probably not.
Right. But people fall for the illusion.
Yeah.
And like you have to stay private somehow.
Somehow. I don't know how they do it. I'm kind of glad we're not that famous on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't ever want to be that famous.
No, I mean, there's a part of me that does, but all for the wrong reasons. Like, I just want the money and the fame and the, but.
Yeah, I don't want it at all.
Interesting.
I'm good. I have a nice life. I'm good.
I'm not complaining about my life. It's very different, right, than it was even a year ago. But I'm at a place where I'm generally pretty happy, so I kind of agree with you, but I would just love the fantasy of being able to do half the things that celebrities get to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Like jet setting off somewhere and getting on a yacht.
Yes, that would be fun. But I don't want the fame that comes with it.
Yeah, agreed. Especially with all the crazy fuckers like these assholes.
For real.
But all right, so thank you everybody for listening to yet another episode of Bite Size Murders. Once again, I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.